Okay, so this is my first time doing this, so bear with me. Today I'll be doing a quick review of the sophomore record from West Virginia metalcore band Left Behind, called Blessed by the Burn. I became familiar with Left Behind about a year ago when they released their debut album, Seeing Hell. It's an okay record. It didn't really stick with me. I don't continue to listen to it. I really like the track featuring Knocked Loose's Brian Garris. I think Snakes it's called. But other than that, it didn't resonate with me that much. Now, their new record, it's been all over my social media feed, so I decided to check it out, and it's okay. So Left Behind, they do metalcore, but they blend it with this sort of beatdown that's really popular right now. But they also mix it with some stoner metal stuff, and they've sort of found their niche with that. I think they started on it with Seeing Hell, and it really they're really starting to find sort of their spot in this really oversaturated metalcore scene. So this new record, it's dirty, it's heavy, it's low, it's got this attitude, it's angry, and I think that's really where it's getting the most of its attention, is that it's an angry record. It's mean. So it's really hard to stand out in this metalcore scene, in this beatdown, this underground metalcore scene that blends these elements of beatdown and hardcore, because I'm not knocking Knocked Loose, because I love Laugh Tracks. It was one of my favorite albums of last year. I think it came out last year. But because of the sort of meteoric rise of that record, it got a lot of mainstream, and well, mainstream within the alternative, metalcore scene, like alternative press features, all that. It spawned this tidal wave of bands that were like, hey, I can write a bunch of zeros and make it as heavy as possible, and like people are gonna buy it. And it just made this oversaturated market of just a bunch of bullshit, just a bunch of not good music from people who thought, that they could just write the lowest, heaviest thing and be, like the next Knocked Loose. And I don't even know, I think I'm excited to see where Knocked Loose goes with this next record, because I even think that they could fall into this pigeonhole that they sort of created, not intentionally or anything, but it's just pigeonholing a lot of bands. So their previous album, Seeing Hell, like I said, I liked it. It was okay. It wasn't memorable. I don't really, like I said, the only track I could name off of it is Snakes. I'm not really sure that this album is going to be any different. I've listened to it, over and over again, and it's a few tracks stand out, but it just doesn't really do anything that I think their previous album didn't do. All it really did was cement themselves in their own sound. However, I think Left Behind does some really cool stuff in this record. There are these riffs that get your blood boiling. I really like the sound of the drums on this thing too. It's there's like this. It doesn't sound oversampled like a lot of metalcore records these days. They record the live drums, but then they're so oversampled after that it just sounds, it just doesn't sound good. It just sounds programmed. It sounds fake. You don't get any performance out of it. But there was dynamics in the drum tracks. It was much more of a raw sound. However, the mix is a little muddy. You lose some parts, especially because they do all these cool southern rock riffs throughout the record, which I think is what sort of makes the record. But some of them are indistinguishable because you can't. The mix is so muddy that you can't really. They don't cut through, which is obviously a result of trying to give this natural sound, to give these dynamics, to give the performance of them playing. But in this case, I think it could still be cleaned up a little bit, EQ'd a little better, stuff like that. The vocals on this thing are insane too. They're low, they're brutal. It's pretty blood curdling. And I like that this album does some really good things. It creates a lot of heaviness without having that sort of like the whole song arching towards this one breakdown and then having this big breakdown and then sort of resolving the song, because that's what a lot of these beatdown bands are doing. They're going heavier and heavier and heavier until they get to this climax and they hit it and then they kind of pull back a little bit and then they end the song. This album doesn't really do that. Most of the tracks have they have a different structure to them. I wouldn't necessarily go as far to say that it's a great structure still, but it's better than a lot of these copycat like pigeonhole metalcore beatdown bands. So going like track by track on this thing, West by God, man, that fucking track, that is like they couldn't have picked a better opening track, man. That shit, like, good job, guys. That shit was fucking incredible. The Left Behind, you fucking bitch, like that, it sets the tone of the whole record so well, because after that, like that's the whole tone. It's this edgy, pissed off, fuck you kind of attitude, and I think that's why it's so well received so far by the community, is because, you know, I mean, you guys know how the metalcore community is. It's a big edge fest of who can be more angry, and they are fucking angry. Then we go into tracks like Sweetness of Nothing. It's sort of forgettable. There are some cool southern type riffs in it, but nothing compared to something like Focus on the Flesh, where like my attention's almost gone, and then like by the end of Sweetness of Nothing, I'm already starting to drift away. But then Focus of the Flesh comes in, and that bitch will grab your attention. It forcefully grabs it. I think it's one of the best tracks on the record. It's got these groovy southern riffs that remind me of I don't even know. It reminds me of I'm like in a trailer. It's great. And then you keep moving on. Tracks like 24 I think are kind of cool. It shows what a band like Code Orange is doing for this community, because you can tell there's some definite influence. It's got that industrial sound, and it's cool. I think they could have done more with it, because it sort of serves as more of like an interlude than an actual track, where we've seen, you know, like Code Orange does that so well. They blend that industrial into the metalcore, and they do it really well, where this just kind of sounds like an interlude. But I like that they took that direction. I like that they took that influence. And then moving on to a song like Blessed by the Burn, the title track. That's my favorite track by far. I think it's definitely the best track on the whole record, and that's that. And I keep going back to this, but it's that southern sound, because I think that's where this record excels. Is where they take that southern sound and they add those riffs and they add that attitude. That's where it excels, because when they just get into this sort of like metalcore beatdown kind of style, like it's uninteresting. I mean, you can only write so many riffs that are like that. But I think that when they bring in that southern, it's still that beatdown style, but blended so well with that southern doom stoner metal type vibe, and I just love it. After that, the album loses kind of steam, loses a lot of steam actually. There's not, I don't know, I think most of the rest of the tracks are forgettable. There's some heavy ones, you know, there's some parts in there where it catches your attention again, but I just found myself drifting. I found my attention drifting a lot during some of like the verses and stuff, where it just doesn't really do anything. And that's what I think, going back to the structure again, I think the structure of these songs are kind of poor. I think there's just too many forgettable parts, which I know the whole song shouldn't shouldn't be extremely attention grabbing, but you still have to keep the interest during the more routine parts. I like the track Early Morning too. That one was good. Don't really have much to say about it. Once again, just those stoner riffs, man. I think they make this record, but everything that isn't breaks it. So I guess in summary, I think Left Behind really cemented themselves in the underground metalcore scene with this record. Not that they weren't before. I mean, seeing how really got them a lot of attention, and I think that this album just proves that they're here to stay. You know, I don't think that they're going to be like a lot of these bands where they sort of have to stop being a band because there's just not much of an audience for it. Because it's a lot of do-it-yourself from this scene, and I think they're going to be able to continue to do it. I'm really looking forward to the next record, and I hope that they take that stoner metalcore crossover. I hope they take that to another extreme and really find their niche, because it seems like they're still feeling it out. But I'd like to see them take it one step further and really commit to this I don't even know what to call it, like stoner core almost. And I think that they'll if they can find that sweet spot, that they're gonna push past all their contemporaries, because these bands are a dime a dozen right now. Yeah, I think they'll push past their contemporaries, and I think they'll be a really good band. But until then, I'm feeling a decent 5 on this album.